And my sense is that a lot of people in the kind of consciousness space, whether that's meditation or psychedelic renaissance or you name it, but people who are sort of saying, hey, our answer is elevated consciousness. And I think they are absolutely right. If we take a look at all the trend lines of what's happening in the material world, most of them go off a cliff sometime in the next 3 to 5 decades or sooner. And the only sort of asymptote, the only sort of Hail Mary, can we actually pull this off against all odds play, is some substantial and nonlinear up-leveling of human consciousness and collaboration, right? Such that war on sense-making, right, becomes massive collaboration. And we actually we boost our collective intelligence and coordination. And no matter how cynical you are about the state of Western democracies, if you assign some heightened capacity to higher stages of consciousness, and even like multidimensional awareness and the universe and information theory, you can take whatever level of wild-ass guesses as to the nature of reality. Let's say you're really far up that stack. Still, all of it is mediated by these meat suits in 3D. Right, until further notice, consciousness is animated via cognition, and bodies and brains and hearts and lungs and oxygen. And every time, and no matter what our views are of this life and other lives, there's, with rare exceptions of like Tibetan tulkus and lamas who, claim to have recollection of prior incarnations. Basically, when we lose these meat suits, it's a cold reboot and we lose all the data, at a minimum. So the question is that where else would you choose to park your meat suit to engage in all of those higher level pursuits, explorations, even objectives, other than in a civil society with rule of law, civil rights, and protection of private properties? So you can be as cosmic and out there in your philosophies, cosmologies, ontologies, and you would still quite rationally come back around to being a highly engaged citizen that does give a shit about your vote and does give a shit about what's happening. Because the key is, obviously, how do we go from rivalrous, egocentric, ethnocentric, game A dynamics, which is arguably the sort of inheritance of Homo sapiens, right? The ape who knows, but also the ape who games, the ape who is working to win. Right, to what Johann Huizinga, the Dutch theorist, called Homo ludens, right, the playful ape, the ape who is playing the infinite game. And the infinite game is really only accessible not from an ego-ethnocentric level of consciousness, but from a global-centric level of consciousness. And that's the critical move. How do we move as many people as possible from ego-ethnocentric to global-centric as fast as possible? And there's something really interesting about those developmental moves, which is that it's a skip level play. So the only way that a baby gets to develop egocentrism, right? Because when a child is born, they're in just fusion. So they've been in the womb. Me and mommy are the same organism. I have no separation. I come out of the womb. I'm attached to the teat, right? I'm hugging. I am just this blob. And I am absolutely connected to that heartbeat and that love and all of those things. And then egocentrism comes online when I realize there's me and there's not me. There's mommy and me. And that is how the terrible twos come online. I'm like, I am a free agent. I can do things. I can move things. I can bend things to my will. Hot damn. So the only way we get to egocentric is to realize there is someone that's not me. The only way we get to ethnocentric is to go a level beyond that and realize there's someone that's not us. They're those smelly bastards across the river that talk funny and dress funny and don't deserve what they've got, and we're going to take it. The only way to get to global centric is to realize there is something or someone that's not human. So we have to glimpse a cosmocentric perspective in order to annex a global centric stance. Now, how the hell do we do that? Right, so one of the only examples I think we've really got, other than individuals sparking off, sort of the axial age greats of Jesus and Muhammad and Buddha and Lao Tzu and that lot, are astronauts and the famous sort of flyover effect, right? And this has been persistent from the original Apollo missions all the way to some of the astronauts on the space station these days. But there is something absolutely profound about looking down on that little blue marble and seeing the sun come up and go around and seeing it rotate and seeing the Amazon and seeing the Nile and seeing the Himalayas and realizing, man, all the boundaries go away. I mean, all the normal cliched shit that gets said about that. And in fact, that original photo was what Stuart Brand put on the Whole Earth catalog in the early 70s, right? And it was game changing. I mean, humans had never seen our home, right, from afar. And it literally was credited with kicking off the entire environmental movement of the 70s. Now, that doesn't scale. We can't all buy tickets to Virgin Galactic and go get our shot of that. But rather than being astronauts, can we instead perhaps become psychonauts? Can we explore levels of consciousness that give us that actually lived experience, that somatic sense of, I have gone beyond my tribe, and I now definitively come back to the level of global-centric life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, because all men are created equal. And if they're not created equal, they are sure as shit entitled to that aspirational move. So the question then is how do we do that? Because it's one thing, bottom line is, we can be anti-rivalrous, right, when there's enough to go around. And if we're thinking about future-proofing, that's a partial and inadequate condition, right? If it only works when everybody's got enough, that is fine, but temporary and not actually likely to closely match our conditions going forward.